Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
Six weeks ago, my entire world ended. My husband collapsed in our kitchen while making scrambled eggs on a Tuesday morning. Just like that. A brain aneurysm, the doctor said. He was 34 years old. 34! We've been married for 3 years, together for 7. We'd just closed on our first house 2 months before it happened. The place needed work, a lot of work, but we were excited. He'd spend evenings sketching out plans for the kitchen renovation, talking about where we'd put the breakfast nook, what color we'd paint the nursery. We were going to start trying for a baby next month. Everything was planned out. Everything was perfect. Now I'm living in a half-finished house that echoes with his absence, sleeping on the couch most nights because I can't face our bedroom, and apparently I'm supposed to smile more. That's what brings me to yesterday. I was at the grocery store just trying to get through my weekly shopping. I'd been avoiding it for days, living off crackers and whatever random things were already in the pantry. But I finally dragged myself there because apparently you can't survive on stale granola bars and denial forever. I was standing in the cereal aisle staring at boxes without really seeing them. My cart had maybe 4 items in it. I've been in the store for almost 45 minutes. Everything takes longer now. Every decision feels impossible. Every aisle has something that reminds me of him. The coffee he liked, the ice cream we'd share on Friday nights, the stupid hot sauce he put on everything. That's when she appeared. This older woman, maybe in her 60s, with perfectly styled gray hair and a cart full of groceries. She looked nice, honestly, like someone's friendly grandmother. She walked right up to me and told me I'd be so much prettier if I smiled. Just said it like it was the most natural thing in the world. I just looked at her. My brain couldn't process what she'd said at first. I wasn't making any expression. I was just existing. She kept going, telling me it couldn't be that bad, and asking me to give her a smile. She called me sweetie. She said it in this cheerful, encouraging way, like she was trying to brighten my day, like this was a helpful thing to say to a stranger. Something inside me just snapped. Not in an angry way, more like a dam breaking. I wasn't trying to hurt her. I wasn't trying to teach her a lesson. I just couldn't hold it in anymore. I told her my husband had died 6 weeks ago. Her smile started to fade as the words left my mouth. I kept talking. I told her he was 34, that it was a brain aneurysm, that it happened while he was making breakfast and I found him on the kitchen floor. She went completely pale. Her hand went to her chest. I told her we were supposed to start trying for a baby next month, that we'd just bought a house and he'd never see it finished. I told her I wasn't going to smile for her, that I was just trying to buy cereal so I could keep existing. Her eyes filled with tears. Her mouth opened but nothing came out at first. Then she stammered out an apology, saying she didn't know and that she was sorry. Her voice was shaking. She turned and walked away quickly, pushing her cart down the aisle like she couldn't get away from me fast enough. I watched her go, this woman who just wanted to spread a little positivity or whatever, now crying because of what I'd said. I stood there in that cereal aisle for what felt like forever. Just stood there holding a box of cornflakes I didn't even want, staring at nothing. Other shoppers passed by. Someone reached around me to grab something from the shelf. Life just kept moving. Eventually, I put the cereal back on the shelf. I walked away from my cart, left it sitting there with my 4 items, and went straight to my car. I sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes before I could bring myself to drive home. My sister called that evening. I told her what happened. She said good, that maybe the woman would think twice before telling random women to smile. But I told her I'd made the woman cry. My sister insisted the woman had made me relive my trauma in a grocery store. She said the woman had no right to tell me how to look and that I didn't owe strangers my emotional performance. I called my mom after that, hoping for a different perspective. My mom sighed and said that poor woman didn't know what I was going through. She told me I could have just walked away. I told her I knew that. She said the woman was probably just trying to be nice. I told her I knew that too. But here's what I keep thinking about. I'm tired. I'm so tired of performing normalcy for people who have no idea what's happening in my life. I'm tired of strangers who think they have the right to comment on my face, my body, my existence in public spaces. I'm tired of being told I should look happier, be more pleasant, and smile more. I was born in 1962 on a farm out in the middle of nowhere. Back then, things were different. We didn't have ultrasound machines at every doctor's office, and honestly, the nearest town wasn't even that close to where we lived. Most babies in our area were born at home with the help of the same midwife, who'd been delivering babies in the county for decades. When I was 7 years old, my mother got pregnant. We were all excited about having a new baby in the house. My father made preparations, my mother got the nursery ready, and I couldn't wait to be a big sister again. Nobody knew she was carrying twins. There was just no way to know back then unless the midwife caught it during an examination, and somehow this detail slipped past everyone. The day my mother went into labor, my father rushed to get the midwife like they'd planned. She came to our farmhouse and everything seemed to be going according to plan. My mother gave birth to my first baby brother, and we were all relieved and happy. But then, almost immediately after, the midwife got word that she was urgently needed at another farm across the way. Another woman had gone into labor and was having complications. My father had to drive her there right away because she didn't have her own transportation, and this was an emergency. So my father left with the midwife, taking our only vehicle. He thought everything was done. We all did. My mother was resting with the baby, and I was there helping out like I've been told to do. I was supposed to just keep an eye on things and make sure my mother had water and anything else she needed. Then my mother's contractions started again. First she thought maybe it was just after-birth pains or something normal, but then she realized what was happening. There was another baby, she was having twins, and nobody knew. The midwife was gone. My father was gone. It was just me, a 7-year-old girl, alone on a farm with my mother, who was about to give birth to a second baby. My mother started giving me instructions. She tried to stay calm, but I could hear the panic in her voice. She told me what to do step by step, and I did exactly what she said, even though my hands were shaking and I felt like I couldn't breathe. I was terrified. I kept thinking my mother was going to die. I kept thinking the baby wasn't going to make it. I was 7 years old and I was delivering my baby brother with no adult help, no medical equipment, nothing but my mother's voice guiding me through it. Somehow, we made it through. My second baby brother was born, and he was crying and breathing and alive. My mother was exhausted, but okay. When my father finally got back home, he walked into the house expecting to find one new baby and instead found two. Everyone later talked about how crazy and unexpected it was, but all I remembered was being more scared than I'd ever been in my entire life. I never really talked about it much after that. It became one of those family stories people would bring up occasionally, but I usually tried to change the subject. I didn't like thinking about it. The memory of that day never felt good to me. It felt terrifying and overwhelming, and even though everything turned out fine, I couldn't shake the fear I'd felt. Fast forward to last weekend. My husband and I were celebrating our 40th wedding anniversary. We'd planned this beautiful party with all our friends and family. People were giving speeches and sharing memories about us as a couple. It was a wonderful evening, and I was feeling so happy and grateful for everyone being there. Then my brother got up to speak. My youngest brother, the one I'd helped deliver all those years ago. He took the microphone and started telling the story of his birth. He told it like it was this hilarious, heartwarming anecdote about how I'd heroically helped bring him into the world. He talked about how my father came home and found two babies instead of one, and how funny and unexpected it all was. He even thanked me for helping him come into this world, like it was some sweet sibling bonding moment. Everyone in the room was laughing and smiling. People kept looking over at me with these warm expressions like they thought it was the sweetest story they'd ever heard. But I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. All those feelings from that day came rushing back. The fear, the panic, the overwhelming responsibility that no 7-year-old should ever have to carry. My mood completely changed. I tried to keep smiling, but I know my face must have shown something because my brother noticed right away. After his speech, he came over to me. He asked if he'd said something wrong because I looked upset up there. I took a deep breath. I didn't want to make a scene at my own anniversary party, but I also couldn't just pretend everything was fine. I told him that the story wasn't a funny memory for me. I explained that it was actually the worst day of my life. I told him I'd been terrified the entire time, thinking that both he and our mother were going to die, and that I was just a little kid trying to handle something no child should ever have to handle. He stared at me for a moment, and his expression changed from concerned to defensive. He said he couldn't believe how I was reacting. He told me he was trying to honor me and asked if that was really how I thought of his speech. I tried to explain that I wasn't saying his birth was a bad thing. I told him I loved him, but I said he needed to understand that the way it happened was traumatic for me. I explained that what sounded like a fun fact to him was actually the scariest experience of my childhood. He shot back that he couldn't believe I was making this about me right now. He said it was a nice story about siblings and that everyone had loved it. I told him everyone loved it because they weren't the 7-year-old in that room feeling responsible for 2 lives. I reminded him that he didn't remember it because he was literally just being born, but that I remembered every second of it. I said it wasn't something I wanted to relive at my anniversary party. He didn't say anything else. He just walked away looking hurt and angry. Some of our other family members noticed the tension and came over to ask what was wrong, but I just said I was tired. The rest of the evening felt awkward and strained. Now it's been a few days and my brother hasn't called or texted. Some family members have reached out to tell me I should apologize. They say he was just trying to do something nice and that I hurt his feelings. Part of me wonders if I should have just kept my mouth shut and let him tell his story. But another part of me is frustrated that nobody seems to understand how that day actually affected me, or that maybe he should have asked me first before turning my trauma into entertainment at my anniversary party. My husband has been supportive. He told me that my feelings were valid and that I had every right to speak up. He said my brother should have been more considerate about sharing such a personal and traumatic story without asking me first. But even with his support, I still feel conflicted about the whole thing. This has now overshadowed what should have been a beautiful celebration of my marriage. Instead of remembering the speeches about my husband and me, the lovely decorations, and the joy of having everyone together, all I can think about is that awful day when I was 7 and the uncomfortable confrontation with my brother at the party. I've thought about reaching out to him to try to explain things better, but I'm not sure what else I could say. I already told him how I felt. Maybe he needs time to process it. Maybe he'll never understand because he wasn't the one who lived through that fear. Or maybe eventually he'll realize that just because something turned out okay in the end doesn't mean it wasn't traumatic for the people who lived through it. I've been running this cattle ranch for about 8 years now. It's not a huge operation, just 50 acres in rural Texas with about 30 head of cattle, including one very special Brahmin bull named Ferdinand. Yes, I named him after the children's book character, and yes, he's generally gentle, unless you throw things at him. Let me back up a bit. I inherited this place when I was 25. My grandfather had built this ranch from nothing, and I wasn't about to let it fall apart. The work is hard, the hours are long, and the pay isn't great, but it's mine. I live alone in the old farmhouse, wake up at 5 every morning to feed the animals, and spend my days mending fences, checking on pregnant cows, and making sure everything runs smoothly. Ferdinand is my pride and joy. He's a breeding bull, which means he's worth a decent amount of money, but more than that, he's got personality. He's massive, about 2,000 pounds of pure muscle, but he's calm around me because I've raised him since he was a calf. That said, he's still a bull. He's not a pet, he's not a ride at a carnival, and he's definitely not something you mess with. So you can imagine my surprise when I was fixing a section of fence near the back pasture and heard children's voices coming from Ferdinand's enclosure. My heart just about stopped. I dropped my tools and ran toward the sound, my boots kicking up dust. When I got there, I saw something that made my blood run cold. 2 kids couldn't have been more than 6 and 8 years old were climbing through the fence rails into Ferdinand's pen. And standing on the other side, clearly drunk based on how she was swaying, was a woman I'd never seen before. The woman was encouraging her children to go pet what she called the big cow. She said she wanted to take pictures. Her words were slurred and she could barely stand straight. I shouted at her from about 50 yards away, still running. I asked her what the hell she was doing and told her to get away from there. The woman turned to look at me and I could see the glassy look in her eyes even from that distance. She told me to relax and said they were just having some fun. I kept running and yelled back that Ferdinand was a bull, not a petting zoo animal. I told her to get her kids out of there right now. I reached the fence, breathing hard. Ferdinand had noticed the commotion and was standing about 20 feet away from the kids, watching them with his head lowered. That's not a good sign. That's his warning posture. The woman then said her kids wanted to ride the bull. She said it was just standing there like it was no big deal. I told her she needed to leave my property immediately. I explained this was private land, that she was trespassing, and that the bull was dangerous. She argued back, insisting she knew her rights and claiming this was public land. I corrected her, saying it absolutely was not public land. I pointed out there were signs everywhere. I begged her to please get her children out of that pen before someone got hurt. The older kid had stopped climbing and looked scared, but the younger one was still trying to get closer to Ferdinand. The bull snorted and pawed at the ground. The woman called me rude. She complained that they had driven all this way and her kids deserved to have fun. She was slurring her words badly. I could smell the alcohol on her breath from several feet away. This woman had driven here drunk with her children in the car. I told her I was calling the police. I repeated that she needed to get her kids and leave immediately. She finally seemed to agree, calling me a jerk in the process. But instead of getting her kids, she did something I still can't believe. She reached into a bag she'd been carrying, pulled out a half-empty beer can, and threw it at Ferdinand. The can hit him square in the shoulder, and beer splashed across his face. Everything happened so fast after that. Ferdinand bellowed, a sound I'd never heard him make before, and charged. Not at the kids, thankfully, but at the nearest person, which was the woman. I screamed at the kids to get down. I vaulted over the fence and grabbed both kids, one under each arm. They were screaming and I was running on pure adrenaline. I made it to the fence and practically threw them over to the other side, then dove after them. Behind me, I heard the impact. I turned around just in time to see Ferdinand ram the woman with his head. She went flying backward and hit the ground hard. The bull stood over her, still agitated, snorting and stomping. I called out to Ferdinand, trying to get his attention. I grabbed a bucket that I keep by the fence and banged it hard. Ferdinand knew that sound. It meant food. He turned away from the woman and trotted toward me. I quickly led him to the other side of the pen and secured him there. The woman was lying on the ground, conscious but groaning. Her arm was bent at a weird angle, and she had dirt all over her face. The kids were crying hysterically. I called 911 immediately. When the operator answered, I explained that I had a woman who had been injured by a bull on my property. I said she was conscious but hurt badly. I also told them I needed police because she had trespassed, she was intoxicated, and she had been driving with her children. The ambulance arrived within 15 minutes. The paramedics stabilized the woman, broken arm, broken ribs, and a concussion. While they were loading her into the ambulance, I gave my statement to the police officer who arrived with them. The officer asked me to confirm that she had thrown something at the bull. I said yes and specified it was a beer can. I added that this happened after I had told her multiple times to leave and explained that the bull was dangerous. He then asked if she had driven there intoxicated. I confirmed that she had. I told him he could smell it on her, and I pointed to her kids. The officer nodded and made notes. He talked to the kids briefly, who confirmed everything through their tears. Their father arrived about 20 minutes later, absolutely furious when he found out what had happened. The father apologized to me. He explained that he and the woman were divorced. She was supposed to have dropped the kids back at his place hours ago. He said he had no idea she had been drinking or that she would do something like this. I told him I was just glad his kids were okay. The father took the children home. The police cited the woman for trespassing, child endangerment, and driving under the influence. I later found out she also faced a lawsuit from her ex-husband for custody. I reinforced all my fences and put up even more no trespassing signs. Ferdinand got extra treats. That evening, he was a good bull, just protecting his territory. I'm not exactly the quiet type by nature. I just learned early on that speaking up in my family usually made things worse. My younger sister never learned that lesson. She grew up thinking the world owed her everything, and my parents never really corrected that. It started when we were kids. She'd take my toys, my books, my hair clips. Mom would tell me to just share with my sister every single time. Dad would shrug and say, it wasn't worth fighting over. So I stopped fighting. I just let it happen. When we got older, it got worse. Way worse. She started going through my closet like it was a store she had unlimited access to. That jacket I saved up for, gone for 2 weeks, came back with a stain. My favorite pair of sneakers, borrowed without asking, returned with scuff marks all over them. My dresses, my scarves, my jewelry, nothing was safe. Sometimes she'd at least pretend to be polite about it. She'd knock on my door and ask in that sweet voice she uses when she wants something. But most of the time, I'd just see her walking around in my stuff, or I'd go looking for something and realize it wasn't in my room anymore. I complained to my parents a few times over the years. Their response was always the same. Mom would say she was my sister and I should want to share with her. When I pointed out that she didn't even ask anymore and just took things, Dad would ask if it was really that big of a deal since they were just clothes. I'd remind them that they were my clothes and I paid for most of them with my own money. Mom would tell me not to be selfish because family shares. So I stopped complaining too. What was the point? I moved out for college and thought I'd finally have some peace. But every time I came home for holidays or summer break, the same thing would happen. I'd unpack my stuff, and within a day or two, something would be missing. She had a key to my room. Mom gave it to her in case of emergencies. Last summer, I came home for 3 months between graduating and starting my new job. I needed to save money, so living at home made sense. I knew what I was getting into, but I figured I could handle it for a few months. The first week was fine. I kept my door locked, kept my stuff organized, kept to myself mostly. I was working part-time at a coffee shop downtown, so I wasn't even home that much. Then one morning, I was getting ready for work and couldn't find my black shirt. The nice one I wore for shifts. I looked everywhere. Finally went downstairs and saw her wearing it. I told her it was mine. She said she knew and that it looked better on her anyway. I said I needed it for work. She said she was wearing it to brunch with her friends and I could have it back later. She left before I could say anything else. I had to wear an old shirt that didn't really fit anymore. My manager gave me a look but didn't say anything. The shirt came back 3 days later, shoved into my laundry basket with makeup on the collar. That wasn't even the worst part. She took my good jeans, my sandals, even my hair straightener once, which she broke and never told me about. I only found out when I tried to use it and it sparked. I tried locking my door every single time I left, but somehow she still got in. I think Mom was giving her the spare key I kept in the kitchen drawer. When I moved it, Mom asked me why I was being so secretive. Then came the day that changed everything. I was in my room folding laundry. Actually folding it this time because I've been lazy all week and just kept pulling clean stuff from the basket when I needed it. The rest was still dirty, sitting at the bottom. She walked in without knocking. Didn't even look at me. She said that Mom told her I had to let her borrow my clothes. Not a question, not a request, a statement. Like it was a fact, a rule, something decided without me. I asked her what she meant. She repeated that Mom said so. She was going out tonight and had nothing to wear, so I had to let her borrow something. I stared at her. She wasn't even pretending anymore, wasn't even trying to be nice about it, just standing there, arms crossed, waiting. Something snapped in me. Not anger exactly, more like clarity. I didn't say anything. I just walked over to my laundry basket, the one I've been avoiding all week, picked it up, walked over to her, and held it out. I told her, here you go. She looked down at it. I could see her brain trying to process what was happening. She asked if I was serious. I said she wanted my clothes. She stared at the basket, at the gym shirts that smelled like sweat, at the socks that had been sitting there since Monday, at the shorts I'd worn during a hike that got covered in dirt. Everything in there was disgusting. Actually disgusting. The kind of stuff you don't even want to touch until you're literally throwing it in the washing machine. Her face went through about 5 different expressions: confusion, disgust, anger, then something else. Maybe realization. She didn't take the basket, didn't say anything, just turned around and walked out, slammed the door behind her. I put the basket down and went back to folding my clean clothes. She went downstairs. I heard her talking to Mom, voice all high-pitched and outraged. Heard Mom call my name. I didn't go down. Later, Mom came to my room. She said my sister told her I gave her dirty laundry. I explained that she said she wanted my clothes, so I gave her my clothes. Mom said I knew what she meant. I told her no, I didn't. My sister said Mom told her she could have my clothes, so I gave them to her. Mom just looked at me for a long moment. Then she left. My sister didn't talk to me for a week, didn't come into my room, didn't ask for anything. 2 months later, I moved into my new apartment. Been here ever since. She's visited twice. Both times she stayed out of my bedroom, didn't touch anything, didn't even look at my closet. Sometimes she still acts entitled about other stuff. That's just who she is, I guess. My partner and I bought 20 acres outside town, and we've been raising ducks, pigs, and chickens ever since. It's hard work, but honest work. We sell duck eggs at the farmer's market, and my partner bakes these amazing sourdough loaves that people drive an hour to buy. The thing about farming is that you're always covered in something. Mud, hay, duck poop, pig slop, you name it. I've worn it. My partner jokes that I have 2 wardrobes: farm drag and town clothes. Farm drag is basically whatever is already ruined beyond repair. Stained jeans, torn flannel shirts, boots that have seen things no boot should see. I have pretty bad attention deficit disorder, which means I'm constantly forgetting things or hyper-focusing on the wrong task. My partner set up systems to help me remember the important stuff: feeding schedules posted everywhere, timers on my phone, lists on every surface. But sometimes the chaos still wins. That day I was supposed to pick up hog feed in the morning. Had it on my list, had a reminder set, the whole deal. But then one of our ducks got into the pig pen somehow, and I spent 2 hours trying to catch the little jerk without getting trampled by 3 very curious hogs. By the time I got the duck back where she belonged, it was already 3 in the afternoon, and we were completely out of hog feed. The pigs were due to eat in an hour. I jumped in the truck without even thinking about changing. Didn't realize until I was halfway to the feed store that I was covered in dried mud, bits of straw, and what was probably duck excrement on my shoulder. My jeans had a mysterious green stain on one knee. My flannel shirt was missing a button, but there wasn't time to go back, so I just kept driving. The feed and seed store in our town is pretty big. They've got everything from chicken wire to horse tack to bulk grains. The employees wear these bright blue vests so you can spot them easily. I definitely wasn't wearing one of those. I was wearing what could charitably be called clothes. I grabbed a cart and headed straight for the hog feed. Each bag weighs 50 pounds, and I needed 4 of them. I was wrestling the second bag onto my cart when I heard someone clear their throat behind me. I turned around and there was this older lady with silver hair, probably in her 70s. She looked friendly enough. She politely asked me if I sold salt licks and called me young man while she was at it. I'm 53 years old and my beard is completely gray, but I guess my dirty clothes made me look like I belonged there. I told her no, that I sold duck eggs and baked goods. Her eyes lit up like I just told her about hidden treasure. She asked me where those were. I explained that they were at my farm, not in the store. There was this moment of silence where I watched her brain catch up with what I just said. Her face went through several expressions: confusion, realization, then this shade of pink when she started to blush. She asked me, almost sheepishly, if I didn't work at the store. I confirmed that I didn't work there. She started laughing, this soft chuckle that made her whole face crinkle up. She apologized for the confusion, explaining that she'd just seen me handling the feed and assumed I was an employee. I told her it was the outfit. that I knew I looked like I worked there or at least worked somewhere. She agreed that I looked very agricultural, which made both of us laugh. I told her not to worry about it, that it happened more than she'd think. I even helped her out by letting her know the salt licks were in aisle 7. She thanked me and apologized again for the confusion. I told her there was nothing to apologize for and that she'd been polite about the whole thing. She mentioned that some people were raised with manners, smiled, and headed off toward aisle 7. I went back to loading my hog feed, feeling pretty good about the interaction. When I was loading the third bag, I heard raised voices from a few aisles over. Someone was demanding to know if someone else was deaf, asking why their question hadn't been answered. I recognized that tone immediately. It was the universal sound of someone about to make minimum wage workers miserable. I pushed my cart around the corner and saw a woman in her 40s, blonde hair in that style that always seems to come with a bad attitude, standing in front of a teenager who couldn't have been more than 17. The kid was wearing the blue vest. His name tag said he'd been working there for 3 months. The woman loudly said that she'd been standing there for 5 minutes waiting for help. The employee tried to apologize, explaining that he'd been helping another customer. She cut him off, saying she didn't care about other customers and that she needed help immediately. I walked over and asked if everything was okay. She whirled around to face me and said finally, someone who worked there was showing up. She complained that this child had been ignoring her. I told her I didn't work there. She accused me of lying, saying I was clearly an employee. She gestured at my filthy clothes like they proved her point. I explained that I was just a customer and that I raised pigs. She asked me why I looked like that if I didn't work there. I repeated that it was because I raised pigs. The young employee was trying not to smile. I could see him biting his lip. She said the whole situation was ridiculous and demanded to speak to the manager. The kid pulled out his radio and called for a manager to come to aisle 4. The woman stood there with her arms crossed, shooting daggers at both of us. I went back to my cart and grabbed the last bag of hog feed, taking my time loading it while staying within earshot. A tired-looking woman in her 40s came around the corner, also wearing a blue vest. Her name tag said manager on it. She asked what the problem was. The angry customer complained that the employee had ignored her and that I had pretended not to work there just to upset her. The manager looked at me, took in my dirty clothes, and I watched her try very hard not to laugh. She asked me if I worked there. I told her no, that I raised ducks and pigs. She asked if I was wearing a blue vest. I confirmed I wasn't. She concluded that I didn't work there then. She turned back to the angry woman and explained that their employees wore blue vests and that I was clearly a customer. The woman insisted that I looked like I worked there. The manager pointed out that I looked like I worked on a farm, which I did. She then asked how they could help the customer. The woman sputtered for a moment, then demanded help finding some specific brand of dog food. The manager directed the young employee to help her, and I watched her stomp off after him, still complaining about disrespect and poor service. The manager caught my eye and silently mouthed a thank you before heading back to whatever she'd been doing. The young employee gave me a grateful look over his shoulder when he led the difficult customer away. I finished loading my cart and headed to the checkout. The cashier, an older guy who'd been working there for years, rang up my feed with a knowing smile. He mentioned that he'd heard the commotion and thanked me for not making the situation worse. I told him I'd been in customer service before and knew how it was. We chatted briefly about how some people just woke up choosing chaos. When I was loading the bags into my truck bed, I saw the silver-haired lady from earlier walking out with a salt lick under her arm. She spotted me and waved, calling out that she hoped I had a good rest of my day. I waved back and told her the same, adding that she should stop by the farmer's market on Saturday if she wanted those duck eggs. She said she just might do that. I drove home feeling oddly satisfied. The pigs got fed on time, which was the important thing, but more than that, I've been reminded that most people are decent when you give them the chance. The silver-haired lady could have been rude when she realized her mistake, but instead, she'd been gracious and kind. That teenager at the store was going to remember that someone stood up for him even in a small way, and that angry woman was going to go home still furious, which was her choice to make. When I got back to the farm, my partner was in the garden pulling weeds. They looked up when I backed the truck up to the pig pen and asked how town was. I started unloading the bags and told them about both encounters: the nice lady who thought I worked there, and the angry one who insisted I did. My partner laughed and said that was what I got for going to town in farm drag. I carried the last bag over to the feed bin and dumped it in. The pigs were already gathering, snorting, and pushing each other around in anticipation. I scattered their evening meal and watched them eat, thinking about how much simpler life was out here. Pigs didn't care what you wore or whether you worked at the feed store. They just cared that you showed up and did your job. That night at dinner, my partner asked if the nice lady had seemed interested in the duck eggs. I said she had, and that I'd invited her to the farmer's market. My partner suggested we should make some of those rosemary crackers she liked to pair with the eggs, the ones that always sold out by noon. I agreed that was a good idea. Later, when I was doing the evening check on all the animals, I thought about that moment of recognition on the silver-haired lady's face. That little spark of awareness when she realized her mistake. There was something nice about someone who could laugh at themselves like that. The world would be a better place if more people had that quality. The angry woman probably went home and complained to everyone who would listen about the terrible service at the feed store. She probably told the story like she was the victim, like the world had conspired against her. Some people went through life like that, collecting grievances like other people collected stamps. I locked up the coops and checked that all the gates were secure. The ducks were already settling in for the night, making those soft quacking sounds they make when they're content. Everything was where it should be. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.